to a special episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is Ask the Breakaways. 3 advisors answer your questions about making the leap. It's a conversation with Terry Cook of Parcion Private Wealth, Lori Siegel of Centrix Wealth Partners, and Michael Henley of Brandywine Private Wealth. I'm Mindy Diamond, and this is Mindy Diamond on Independence. After more than 130 episodes of the show, one of the most common responses we've received from listeners is that they want to learn more, particularly when it comes to interviews with breakaways. That is, more specific aspects of the advisor's journey, as well as what they gained or lost on the independent side. So we saved some of those questions and then sent out a survey via social media and email to listeners like you to find out what else you might want to learn. And today's episode is a culmination of that effort. Many thanks to all who participated in that survey. Since we promise complete anonymity, you won't hear your name announced, but you might recognize your question. After reviewing the submissions, we got our team together, looked at some of our most popular breakaway episodes, and narrowed it down to 3 individuals who represented unique stories, client types, and paths to independence. The result? A panel of 3 awesome advisors who graciously took the time to dig into the details of their journey. So in today's episode, we welcome UBS Breakaway Lori Siegel, founding partner of Centrix Wealth Partners, Merrill Breakaway Michael Henley, founder and CEO of Brandywine Oak Private Wealth, and UBS Breakaway Terry Cook, CEO of Parcion Private Wealth. Each opted for different paths to independence, with Lori joining the independent arm of Raymond James, Michael launching his own RIA with the assistance of Dynasty Financial Partners, and Terry choosing to launch his own RIA, but taking more of the do-it-yourself route. Each started this journey at different asset levels. Lori at around $300 million, Michael at $900 million, and Terry at $1.3 billion. Yet they experienced extraordinary growth and independence. Each of them work with different client niches as well. Lori with high net worth clients, Michael with ultra high net worth clients and business owners, and Terry's with entrepreneurs. And while each have different views of some of the nuances of business ownership, one thing they all agree upon: independence was the absolute right path for them. In this special episode, recorded both as a video and audio only format, they answer your questions with grace, authenticity, and candor. So a special thank you to our guests and to you, our listeners, for making this happen. If you're not already a listener of our podcast series, please visit our website, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. So let's get to it. So first of all, I'd like to welcome my partner, Lewis Diamond, joining me on the show today.
Excited to do this.
Yeah, and our esteemed guests, Lori Siegel, Terry Cook, and Michael Henley. Thank you all so much for making the time and sharing your insights with us. We have lots to get to, so let's jump right into it. I have the first question, and I'd like to ask it of each of you. Tell us a little bit about your backgrounds, where the firms you came from, where you are now, and how long you've been independent. So why don't we start with you, Lori? We'll go to Terry and then Michael.
So we left UBS after 10 years. Prior to that, we were at Smith Barney for 13. We've had our own business, Centrix Wealth Partners, since February 11th, 2019.
Amazing. Amazing. And we'll unpack a little more about how it's going, but thank you for sharing that. Terry.
Yeah, so I've been doing this 28 years, the first 9 with Merrill Lynch, and then 16 or so, just over 16 with UBS. And then we launched Parcion Private Wealth October of 19, lifted out 12 individuals from the team.
Awesome. And again, excited to learn more. We'll come back to that. Michael.
Yes, so we started Brandywine Oak Private Wealth 3 years ago in July of 2018. we were lifers at Merrill Lynch. So I had a bold as my wedding cake, believe it or not. So we definitely drank the Kool-Aid, and it's been 3 years, kind of crazy.
Amazing. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how life has changed for each of you as an independent. Tell us a little bit about the things that are most different and how you've grown your businesses since inception. So let's start with you, Terry, and we'll go back around. We'll do Terry, then Michael, then Lori.
Yeah, lots has changed. On a high level, kind of, I break it down into since we've been independent. Obviously, there's the part of actually running your own business, which nobody can fully be prepared for in some ways. But as far as the major differences, it's access to tools and investment process, the types of services that we can provide, and then the technology that's available to us. All of those have really added to really fuel our growth. And so those are the kind of the high level what I would initially point to.
And how has your business grown since you left?
It's grown. It's on a, I hate to jinx myself. It's on an unsustainable 50% a year growth rate, and we're talking about starting with $1 billion business. So it's been quite remarkable, and happy to kind of touch on where I think that comes from, and I think we'll do that.
We definitely will. Thank you. That's amazing, and that's extraordinary growth. Michael, do you agree with what Terry shared in terms of those are the things that are really driving it that's most different, and how has your business grown since you left Merrill?
I sure do. I entirely agree with Terry, especially around the technology side. So I would say one of the biggest advantages from our vantage point was the technology solutions, tax planning software, Holistic Plan, eMoney Advisor. We're just literally night and day for those of us who are kind of, honestly, wonky, maybe financial planning nerds, like getting the weeds on some of this stuff. Technology was significantly night and day. I would also add, just more recently, we're now in a position to file clients' tax returns, something we were never able to do before at a big bank. So being in a position to essentially be able to file the return, the gift tax return, states, et cetera, is super exciting for us.
That's great. And how has your business grown since you've gone independent?
Yeah, so I would say we left Merrill Lynch. We were about 850 million, 900 million of assets. We're now kind of closing on 1.5 billion. So not quite Terry's growth rate. I'm going to talk to him offline about what he's doing. But moving in the right direction, certainly.
That's exciting and wonderful. Okay. Lori, how about you?
All right, tough acts to follow. Growth rate, probably not quite as high as theirs, but a good, healthy growth rate. Quality of life is better. Feel like we can give more holistic advice. I mean, we were doing some of that at a wirehouse, but just feel the freedom to do everything that we want to do for clients, and more control. And I think the big thing, having been through this year and a half of COVID, oh my gosh, if I was sitting at a wirehouse right now, I would be beating my head against the wall.
Yeah. And why do you think that would be?
Well, because they can't go into the offices, and they're, they can't get in sync with their staff. We've been back in our office since last June and working like before. Now clients are Zooming more, not coming in as much, but we are working as a cohesive unit together.
Got it. And let me ask a follow-up question to that of any of you who want to take it. Terry, you mentioned the ability to do more for clients, and you all seem to agree with that. Can you give us an example, a tangible example of what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, Michael gave a great example for one, and really the way that we look at it, and have looked at it for a while. We run a virtual multifamily office model. So it's those family support, lifestyle services that are really important to, and obviously the advanced planning as well. And and I think you've heard this story, Mindy. When I was at my prior firm, really just trying to give a talk on something, table stakes like estate planning. We work with business owners planning up and through liquidity events. Just talking to them about estate planning on a presentation I was giving to group of 200 business owners, I got it marked back saying with red ink saying not the advisor's role. And this is core to what we do and what we deliver. And then you take that a step further and talk about family support services, and it blows the minds of most global national banks. But it's what in an ever commoditized investment environment, it's what our clients are demanding. So the ability to really craft your services around the unique needs of the clients is freeing. And I'm sure Lori and Michael agree with that part of it.
Yeah, we're both shaking our head a lot.
Yeah. Well, any specific examples from you, Lori?
Yeah, I think, so again, my environment, I like to call it independent light because we do clear through Raymond James Financial Services. So our freedom isn't quite what Michael and Terry have. But yeah, the ability to go deeper, the ability to work with outside mortgage companies, the ability to help with 401k plans when the assets aren't here, just kind of everything. It's feels so much more open.
And Michael, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think I just read the same points that Terry and Lori made, but basically around shopping the street on behalf of their client for something like a lending need. We have a lot of clients right now buying second homes, refinancing, and being in a position to shop Wells Fargo against B of A, against Chase, against maybe a Rocket Mortgage or Quicken or what have you. You're at such a different vantage point, sitting with the client, if you will, as opposed to only having one option to choose from.
Perfect. And I'm a client of Michael's RIA, and I can attest to the fact that I think last week he sent out a notice about he mentioned it adding tax prep services, which is completely different from anything that you could imagine doing at a wirehouse. Very cool. I'll take the next question. Let's start on this one with Michael. Let's go back to your decision-making process about leaving Merrill just about 3 years ago. What would you consider to be the most important criteria used when comparing the tough choice of staying versus going, and especially moving to the independent channel?
Yeah, I would say, Lewis, really what it comes down to is starting with your client's kind of perspective, if you will. So if I'm a client of with this advisor or this team, does it really make sense for that advisor to be paid on credit cards and mortgages and lever up my balance sheet? There's a lot of embedded conflicts. So from the client's perspective, where can I really give the client the most objective, conflict-free advice? I think that leads you easily to the RIA space entirely. But I think for me, it was more of I was spending a significant amount of my time every year trying to evaluate and navigate the latest compensation plan and what kind of hoops I have to jump through or what I have to do to be paid the same or whatever it is. And it seemed like a lot of my time and energy is much better spent perhaps on the tax code and navigating tax law changes for families, and not so much the internal, changes for a large, commercial bank.
Very good. And Lori, how would you answer that?
Yeah, so not just how are you paid, but just how are they making our lives more difficult in how we were going to deliver service to our clients. And I mean, again, I go back to the beating your head against the wall analogy. There were times when I was just so frustrated. So for us, it was really about how do we get away from that wirehouse bank owns us structure. My partner's in his late 30s and he's got a long runway, and I didn't want to see him stuck in this environment for what could be 30 more years. We wanted a good reputation and we wanted control. So that's really what we were looking for. And we were going to something as much as we were going away from something.
Yeah, well said. I love that line. How about you, Terry? Tough act to follow those two answers, but what would you say?
that's great. And so I won't duplicate because they're spot on. Honestly, I think you have to be honest with yourself. There's some fantastic advisors at wirehouses, and there always will be. And that's the right place for a lot of them. I'm just being honest. You have to really want it. You have to really have that entrepreneurial drive. There's such massive choice out there. Not everybody wants that. Some people want it easy and say, yeah, you don't have as much choice, but just pick from these and it'll make you easy. And then you're in at 9 out of 3. And so I mean, that's real. And it's a great lifestyle for some people. We wanted it. We thought we had something different. And that, I think that's the other point. If you do it different, if you have a differentiated approach at all, you're way diluted at a wirehouse. Because I know somebody else that works at UBS, so I think I know what you do. Once you're independent, then you can brand around that difference and be known for that. But if you don't have a differentiated approach or value proposition, then maybe a wirehouse is the best place.
Thank you. And Terry, the next question I'll turn to you. What was the most important piece of prep work you did prior to handing in the resignation letter?
Whew. The prep, I hired some help. And there's lots of great resources out there, and all shapes and sizes, whether it's kind of a partner firm, platform, whatever. But it's like we tell business owners who are planning for a liquidity event, surround yourself with people who have many reps at this same thing. Don't learn it on your own. It's too important, and you've got a day job, right, when you're planning all this. So we hired resources around us with schedules and Gantt charts and resources and vendors and all of this. And that's the amount of choices can be formidable in and of itself, but I think that's the most important kind of prep work we did.
Perfect. And how about you, Lori?
Yeah, so a few things. So first of all, an honest evaluation of your business. What are you doing, and are they going to follow you? Have you already built the relationships and differentiated yourself and kind of put a moat around your business because your former colleagues are coming after you? So I think that's the first thing you really have to look at. And then, are you moving to something you're excited about? We talked to a lot of RJFS business owners. They gave us a lot of time. And so we felt like we knew not everything, but a lot of where we were going. And then spreadsheets, lots of prep work, all the vendors, and we don't have as many as you two did outside of RJFS, but there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, I don't think you can do this in less than a year, maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's the biggest move you'll make in your career, and you're launching into your own business. So you don't want to do it haphazardly at all. Michael, same question for you with an additional wrinkle. I would love if you can share how you got up to speed about the independent space. I know you're a student of the industry, so what did you find to be the most effective and an efficient way to learn about what an RA was and all the different possibilities that exist on this other side of the industry?
Yeah, for me, Lewis, it was actually a couple different podcasts. One of them is certainly this podcast. I thought was phenomenal. This actually got me turned on to the independent space in the first place. But I would add Michael Kitz's podcast as well, was phenomenal. The Financial Advisor Success podcast. And actually, I think the biggest maybe aha moment for me was doing my Certified Private Wealth Advisor designation out in Chicago. Michael Kitz is one of the instructors. I just remember talking to him after the fact. You seem like you're really passionate about this stuff. You love the industry. Have you thought about the RA space? And I think him asking me that question, I just said, I don't know. I didn't really know. And but no, I would say there's a couple podcasts and kind of Michael Kitz specifically. But I would say specific to maybe things that I would do again. I went to an e-money conference and a T3 conference while I was still active at Merrill. I paid for it, obviously out of pocket, but I think that was a good way to really get thrown into, hey, here's what this all looks like. Here's the different tools, because the demos can often be somewhat anemic in terms of the data you're going to be able to see. But going to a financial planning type tech conference, you'll get kind of an influx of all the different, providers.
Very good. And Lori, question for you. What kept you from moving sooner? Why didn't you move 5 years ago or 6 years ago?
Well, so first of all, it took us a while to be unhappy. So we weren't moving just to move. And we were really at UBS about 7 or 8 years before we were sort of like, this is changing, and it's changing rapidly. And we're not sure this is really supposed to be our home forever. So that was really the big thing. is we weren't previously looking like, oh my gosh, we want to go independent. What really did it was, oh my gosh, we've now worked for 2 large firms. They're really all the same. I'm surely not going to do that again. Let's see what's out there and what's going to fit for us. And the other thing, quite frankly, my business isn't as big as Terry and Michael's. And so I needed to feel that I was at a point that financially it made sense to go independent, because you do have a lot of costs fixed costs that you're taking on no matter what happens in the stock market, right? So all of those things kind of came together in 2017, 18, when we really started batting it around.
Yeah.
Lori, I'm sorry, Louis. Sure. Lori, can I ask you a follow-up question?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that one of the driving factors was your 30-year-old partner who you didn't want to be stuck at Merrill Lynch. I'm struck
UBS,
by that. UBS, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I'm struck by that because we work with a lot of multi-generational teams, and it makes sense that a father wouldn't want his son to be stuck, or a mother wouldn't want her son to be stuck, or something of the sort. But it's probably less common for a senior advisor to be so concerned about the younger generation being stuck when it's not a family member. So what was that about?
We've worked together. He started working with me when he was 19, and he was my intern. And, then he became my partner. He's an amazing guy. And I want him to have a great future. I think that what this business has to offer is unparalleled anywhere else. And I could just see the changes faster than he saw at the wirehouse. And I didn't want that from him. I probably couldn't have stood it any longer, because I'm that kind of person, and it started irritating me. But from a financial standpoint, I could have stayed. But I just felt for him that made more sense. And then ultimately, he got fed up enough. There were enough little things that started working on him that he was like, okay, yeah, I get it. Let's do it.
Mm.
Yeah, that's great. How about, so the same question for Terry around what kept you from moving earlier?
I guess I didn't run into you earlier, Louis, and you could have helped me with this. But, part of it, well, 2 things. One is the narrative worked on me, the wirehouse narrative that clients are here because of the wirehouse and the services and the security and all that. So that played on me until really it became my clients demanding me do more for them and their families. And that where I wanted to take and grow the business around were those needs. Once, a couple sizable clients said, Terry, you leave or we leave, or we're going to go find another relationship, aside from the wirehouse that I was at. That really started the light going off. So obviously, like anybody who does this successfully, they're wishing they did it sooner, but really it happened at the right pace. And when the clients were kind of demanding these additional services.
Yeah, happened when it was meant to. So Michael, I'm going to change gears to you a little bit, somewhat of a similar question. Was there a point in your career where you wouldn't have made the move to independence? And if so, when and what were the reasons to hold off at that time?
No, it's a great question. So I would say that if I was giving advice to a newer advisor, a younger advisor especially, I think as you're building your practice the first 18 to 36 months, having that big brand name behind you can certainly be helpful, whether it's Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, whatever it is. It's a recognizable kind of name brand on Wall Street. So I think, that can resonate well with prospective clients, especially if you're younger in your career. Now, after that client base has been established, let's just say, 3 to 5 years in, especially if you're on a team, I think by all means, it's where the industry is going. I think it's the right decision for your clients. But I just think super early on, I have, let's just say individuals reach out to me and want to get into our profession. My advice is usually, hey, maybe think about if you need the brand behind you at first, great, but know, kind of begin with the end in mind, and know that's not where you're going to spend your entire career. I'm going to be there for 3 to 5 years, get great training, and I'll go out on my own and do my own thing.
Yeah. So let me ask a question of all of you. In hindsight, and it's been a different amount of time since you've left your respective firms, but in hindsight, how about the transition process? Is there anything about it that you wish you would have done differently, or how did it go for you? Do you feel like you got the exact right amount of support to make the move? And why don't we start with you, Terry?
You don't know what you don't know at the time. I got good help around me. I think you can never fully be prepared for the part of running your own company. Whether I could have talked to more people about that aspect of it and truly understand what that entailed, the culture, being responsible for the culture. What does it take to lead? How do you leverage your time? On one hand, I say I would have prepped more on that, but I don't really know how you can do it until you do it. How you really know. So that's kind of how I would answer that. Mindy, is just try to get my head around what it's going to take to be a CEO of a business as well as a financial advisor.
And so who or what was the most impactful in your transition?
As far as kind of the resources that I put around me?
Yeah.
And in my situation, I got to give them credit. We worked with a resource group with Fidelity, that's our custodian. And they put a really strong group of seasoned professionals of all aspects of, technology experts, a former COO, a number of people to project manage real estate to help us with this, and had Gantt charts. So that was the single kind of best resource that I had.
Great. So, Michael, you used Dynasty Financial Partners as a service provider to get from there to here. And Lori, you had Raymond James. So how would you guys answer that question in terms of, did you have the exact right amount of support? Is there anything you wish you had or had done differently?
I'm happy to jump in, Lori. So, basically, I would say for the joke that I would make is I would have named our firm Brandywine Private Wealth from the very beginning. We had to change our name. That's a long story I won't get into. But no, by and large, I think exactly as Terry mentioned, I think you really cannot be, it's impossible to be fully prepared, because as a business owner, you're essentially kind of trying to play a chess match and a boxing match at the same exact time. So you're really trying to play the long game, but then on a day-to-day basis, it feels like a boxing match. So I think it really is, you just can't really, all I can really compare it to is kind of starting off in the business, on the training program, if you will, that same excitement, that same passion, that same enthusiasm all comes right back, because you're basically, for what it's worth, selling your clients, if you will, on a new model. So I think that's, but no, I think by and large, Dynasty was definitely helpful.
Great. And Lori?
So yeah, RJFS was great for us. Always there. Getting a little bit into the weeds of this for actual things, like renting office space was a lot more difficult than we thought, because, we wanted 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. Well, you don't get that everywhere. And we had to do a build out. I wish we would have started looking at the space earlier. We had to go into temporary space before our space was finished. And just generally, everything takes longer than you think it's going to, right?
Yep.
And then the other thing that I wasn't expecting is, for our license to transfer, my partners transferred in an hour. Mine took 3 days. I couldn't talk to clients for 3 days. Yeah. So, hello, Texas.
I'll take the next one. Let's start this one with Terry. Obviously, the economics are a major component of the decision to go independent, but it's at the cost of leaving deferred comp on the table, and also the opportunity cost of not getting a 300% recruitment deal from another wirehouse or from a W-2 model. So for you, how did you reconcile the economic decision?
Yeah, especially, 26 years into the business when I made the decision. We get paid very well, right? And that's great. And for some people, that's be a tough hurdle to get over. I did the rough math, but I don't really even want to look back and do the math because I didn't do it for that, honestly. I did it because I wanted to see where I could take this, where we could grow this to. And I'm going to be fine either way economically, right? Having a lot more fun now, some days better than others. But the other thing is the opportunity that we're all providing for our team and a growing team on that. And that's pretty cool. You don't have that opportunity in a big global bank. You really can't say, hey, I want to craft opportunity. I want to move this person here. I want to call them this. I want to compensate them this way. So the ability to really develop and lift up kind of the next generation is, I underestimated the thrill of that in this role. So I don't know that I answered your question, but it for me anyway, it wasn't necessarily, I wasn't necessarily focused on that.
Yeah, it was more focused on what the future can bring and the vision for what you wanted to create. For you, that was that was an investment worth making. How about for you, Lori? I know part of the business model at Raymond James Financial Services is they do provide some upfront capital. Not nearly as much as you can get from a W-2 firm. But same question for you. How did you reconcile the economics of all this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing. So you should never make this change for money. You should be making it for so many other reasons. That being said, if you do your job well, it will come out well for you economically as well as your clients. I did get a modest amount of money up front. I also never put any of my own money in deferred comp. So I wasn't leaving as much on the table as a lot of people. After Citigroup went to $1, that never really appealed to me. So it really was not a big financial issue for me.
Perfect. So Michael, a little bit of different of a twist for you. I remember from working with you and your team back in 2016, 2017, that you had a partner who could have opted for CTP, which is Merrill's Sunset program. It would be equivalent to Alpha at UBS for Terry and Lori. How did that impact your team's decision to do this?
That's a great question. So Steve basically was on the cusp of taking CTP. Thank God he didn't. But basically at the time I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do $6 million in production. I'll be all top at Merrill Lynch. This is so cool. But I'm so thankful now looking back. And really what I think it was most impactful for Steve, and I think Lori actually mentioned this as well, is that Steve cares probably more than, about his team almost as much as his family. Just like we do, we kind of think of our team as an extension of our family. So when Steve realized that, hey, 6 of the 8 partners who are between 30 and 35 years old were just unhappy at Merrill. We're not happy the way that we used to be. Steve said, I just don't feel right, staying here, knowing you're not happy. If I leave the business in 5 years and, 15 years from now, you're just miserable, knowing how great this industry is or can be. And I think that was a big driver for him.
Perfect. Yeah. And now is Steve and Tracy still active in the business, or have they been bought out or in the process of being bought out?
No, it's a great question. So Steve, into this year, is going to be selling his equity back to the firm. Tracy, probably 5 to 7 years. But no, it's incredibly flexible. So whereas at Merrill was like a 4-year program, they had to come back on as a CA or something, or as an investment analyst. Here, basically, Steve is the chairman. He'll do a 10-year equity sale, basically. So I'll carry him into his, I want to say age 80 roughly, where he's basically kind of part-time now, day and a half a week, loves every minute of being here, has a blast, loves his title, loves everything. So it's
And that was his choice. Like probably some advisor listening saying, oh man, it's a 10-year payout, but that was his choice to get paid out over 10 years, right?
Entirely his choice. And even at that point, he'll keep the same title after that. So really no change there whatsoever. Tracy's probably going to do a 5-year. So it just depends on the person, but really it's, you're absolutely right. You're in the driver's seat. It's not the firm telling you how you're going to retire, how you're going to work in the future, how many days you have to be in the office. I think this insanity is just all kind of out the window.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
I want to shift to the clients for a minute, but you're talking and it raises a question. Lewis and I were actually talking offline in preparation for this about how a lot of wirehouse advisors are intrigued by the notion of independence. And especially when you begin to talk about the notion of building enterprise value and what a good producing, well-run independent business could be worth, and sell it on the open market. And today we know the M&A market is hot as could be. There's an endless supply of buyers and people that want to invest in well-run businesses. But a lot of wirehouse advisors who are thinking about going independent ask this: okay, it's robust and rich now, and there's no shortage of possible acquirers, but how do I know that that's going to be the case 5 or 10 years from now when I'm ready to do it? Any of you want to take a stab at that, how you might answer that?
Well, I'll start, and just in part, it goes back to my earlier comment about this is not right for everybody. I mean, you have an entrepreneurial risk-taking kind of approach to things, and that's one of the risks. You also have to have confidence or a plan on how you're going to continue to grow. I feel like growth's going to get rewarded, whether it's the same multiple as today or in the future. But and usually, and I work almost exclusively with business owners who have grown businesses, usually that's very well rewarded. So that was just the risk that I was willing to take.
You trusted it.
And certainly not willing to cash out just because the environment's hot right now.
Right.
I agree with exactly what Terry said, Mindy, and I would just add to that basically, even if the multiples do compress some from where they are now, if you compare the economics, the after-tax long-term capital gain treatment to ordinary, it's still night and day. So my personal planning, for example, I'm going to use maybe a 50% multiple where we are now, but I still think when you run the numbers, you're still so much better off as an independent business owner than you are a W-2 employee.
Great. Got it. Okay, let's shift to the clients, and I'd love to hear from each of you. So were there any reservations on the part of your clients? Like, what did the pitch sound like? What was the client's response to your going independent? So why don't we start with you, Lori?
Of course. Okay, so I actually went back and looked at my notes because you don't think I would remember all this 2.5 years later, right? So we said things like, we started looking over a year ago to work with a firm where we were not employees of a large bank. We found the perfect partner. Our whole team came with us. That was a big thing for clients. Everybody came with us. I said, we wanted to have control over the quality that we could deliver to you with an independent office, but we still wanted backing and outside custody of your assets. We talked a lot about financial segregation, all the things that we all have, no matter where you are, but clients don't know that, right? And so we talked about SIPC and FDIC and all those things. And then just what hasn't changed, and that's that we're going to continue to provide our advice to help you with a successful financial outcome.
And any clients skeptical of that?
We took, 93, 95% of what we wanted, which I'm sure these gentlemen did as well. I would say the only thing is, and I think it's gotten worse now, I'm glad we left when we did, is that the people you used to work with, they're offering 30% discounts, 50% discounts, free fees for a year. So, you have to fight that. And, we came out of it, and financially, we were in great shape. It was shocking, frankly, how quickly we surpassed what we were making before. And I'm sure these two would say the same thing. But, you got to take the leap of faith.
So how long was it until you were making equal to or greater than what you were making before?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it was 6 or 8 months, right? Because our assets we have a small number of households, 110 households. We had our whole team plus RJFS sent people to work with us to do the paperwork. So we left in February, and I think we had most of our assets transferred by June.
It's great. Terry and Michael, how about your experience with the clients?
I'll jump in. We work almost exclusively with business owners. Yet 26 years into my career, I'd never been one. So that resonated with them, and they could all remember when they started their business and why they started their business, because they thought they had a better product or a better service that they could provide. So so that was great, having that focused conversations. The flip side to that is business owners, they may love you, but they're still going to ask the hard questions, and they're still going to make a business decision, and that sharpened us. Some of the kind of the arrows that the firm that we left would throw at us would be around safety and security. What's a small firm? What's Parcion? And we're UBS, Bank of Switzerland. Well, then we would just talk to them about our custodian, and our custodian took no federal bailout money in the financial crisis and didn't have those types of risks, and you didn't have to read about your bank credit rating going to the floor every recession. And then we talked about the safety and security and technology around that. And so it was an easy bridge to cross. But you just have to be ready for it and eyes open. They're going to try everything. And my last point would be your clients give you some gifts when you leave. And some of those gifts are by them not coming. Some of those clients are the ones that took up most of your time, didn't get your value proposition, and free you up for other opportunities. And it was truly the case in our situation.
So was it the case of shrink to grow? Did you leave assets behind?
We left some. We were probably about 85%. And we had, we're $10 million minimums. So we didn't have a tiered book, so to speak. But that 15% was made up while we were still transitioning the 85% we did take.
Mm-hmm. Got it. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, I think Lori and Terry, so I could not agree more. I think we just really stressed that, hey, we've kind of concluded that separating, perhaps where you get your financial advice from where financial products are manufactured is probably in your best interest. I think kind of mimicking the family office model was an easy conversation. And I do think, to Lori's point, that, waiving the fees for a year is something they were aggressively doing. I think that's really something you have to just explain to the client. Look, do not be seduced by discounted financial advice. I mean, just think about all the other ways they can make money off of you. If they can waive the fees for a year and still be profitable, there's a lot of other sources of revenue for these big banks. So it kind of reiterates the point that we're all driving home.
And any skeptics?
I would say we had some clients that were on the fence, but once you really explain that the Fidelity investment story, the custodians have just gotten so significant, they're bigger than the wirehouses, you can really, I think the stability of the custodians, and everyone knows Fidelity, for example, that was such an easy story, discount firm, commission free, at the time it wasn't, but basically that was such an easy story to tell. Many of these clients had their 401k plans with Fidelity, so it was an easy, that from a reinforcement of stability, that certainly helped.
Got it.
Definitely. I'm going to ask more of a kind of granular in the weeds question for whoever wants to take it. A lot of advisors, they lose sleep over many things preparing for a transition. All the decisions, what if so-and-so doesn't come, what if I get found out, et cetera. But one of the more basic fears is how do I actually physically tell my manager or my supervising financial professional that I'm leaving? So I'm curious, how did the conversation go? What did you say, and how did they react when you handed in your resignation notice? Whoever wants to take it.
Jump in on that one.
I'm happy. Go ahead, Terry, all you.
I mean, in a big firm, a lot of the managers' compensation and livelihood is based on your success and your growth. So it's not a fun conversation. So there were the hard ones where it was suddenly I'm their best friend, and then it was adversarial. And then there were the phone calls from their bosses that say, hey, I get it, I'm going to miss you. wish you the best, which I don't know if that was true, but that's what they said. But at the end of the day, it was one of the most exciting days of my career. And so I wasn't going to let, anything take away from that. And at that point, it's point of no return. So it's really an exciting time.
Same experience for you, Michael and Lauren?
Yeah, so I would say for me, our direct manager was at a concert when we resigned on a Friday afternoon, and we called, and they, answered loud music in the background, had to call me back, and I said, "Hey, I'm resigning. I think it's an important phone call." And they thought I was joking. They called back and said, "No, seriously, what's going on?" I said, "No, our whole team is resigning." And that was just an interesting way to communicate, but the rest is history, and off to the races.
Yeah, our manager was out of the office, so we told the assistant manager, and of course she asked, like, what could we do to make you stay? Well, of course you're not going to stay after you've spent all that time figuring out why and what you want to do. So it's just, I think it's one of the least of the things you should worry about if you're considering doing this. Just be professional, be brief, and out the door.
Yeah. Next topic area, I want to talk about platform. So Lori, you have the mic. Let's start with you. Can you talk a little bit about how access is different now as an independent from what you had at UBS in areas like access to managers, alternative investments, model portfolios, research, lending? You fill in the blanks for what's most impactful to your clients.
So first of all, let me just say that my inbox does not contain those 5,000 emails a day from a gazillion different people in the firm sending me stuff they want me to know and they want me to do. So it has freed up a lot of time. So I would say that. From an investment standpoint, honestly, we do pretty plain vanilla investing for our clients. We don't really use alternative investments. So one platform versus the other didn't make a difference for us. We found the research to be great at both firms, and we have always utilized outside research anyway. We never just depended on our firms. So again, for us, that was like just a small part of what we were choosing for a business that uses a lot of alternatives and lots of all that stuff. Totally different answer for you.
Yeah, but there wasn't any areas that you felt you couldn't do as well for clients in your new environment?
No, nothing at all.
Thank you. How about Michael or Terry? How would you answer?
Yeah, so platform-wise, obviously on the investment side, when we were at Merrill, you can access Merrill research, maybe a couple other providers, but really in the independent side, you can truly use the research of every Wall Street firm. So whether it's Goldman, UBS, Morgan Stanley, Merrill, JP Morgan, we have access to all of them, and they all have good analysts. So it's not to say that, there's only one or two great ones out there. Very often we'll latch onto a specific analyst that will jump ship from one firm to another. We'll kind of continue to follow him or her. So I would say that from that perspective, no, absolutely total open architecture, and you can really be brand neutral when it comes to finding solutions for your clients.
Yeah, clients don't know how much better it is, and I'm sure the wirehouses want it that way. Research is one point. Access to tools and products, I totally underestimated the amount of choice. It's overwhelming, and it goes back to my earlier point that it's not for everybody because it is overwhelming. It causes you to also do a significant layer of due diligence yourself. But for our clients, one good example is in the alternative space. And this was always a complaint at the private wealth side of UBS, was that we just don't have anything interesting, or it's just a limited amount of offerings. Well, be careful what you wish for, because now the world is your oyster, right? But particular in the Seattle area where I live and where we operate with most of our clients, it's arguably one of the most talent-rich environment for entrepreneurs and innovators and venture capital. But yet I was never able to access that for my clients, who are all entrepreneurs and want to support other entrepreneurs. So these are small funds, they're very targeted, and arguable anybody with, tens of millions of dollars in net worth should have a corner of their portfolio in this. And so now we're able to access and work with some of the leading venture capital funds in the Seattle area and give our clients access. It's just one example of really what we're able to do now and add value to our clients.
Does the fact that now in the RIA model, it's an unbundled solution where you don't have everything under one roof, is that more challenging for you and your team or for your clients, or is it overall a net plus?
Operationally, it's more challenging, but all of this is more challenging operationally. It's the clients are the winners of it. And, I always tell the team, there's a lot of challenges, and it's why our ability to solve for those and move the ball down the field is why we are successful as we are. If this was easy, then none of us would get paid what we get paid, and we wouldn't be growing like we are.
Yeah, well said.
But if I can ask a question, Terry, you decided to do it yourself. In other words, partnering with your custodian, Fidelity, you went out and pulled together all of the vendors that you need so that when you want to find a bespoke alternative solution, you're on your own to vet it and source it. Michael, for example, you rely on Dynasty. I imagine for you, or I shouldn't imagine, is it less like drinking from a fire hose? Is Dynasty helpful in helping you to source those solutions?
I would say yes. I think it really comes back maybe to how you're really running your investment process. But I would say they are certainly giving us research reports on specific companies we've asked for. So, for example, we work a lot with DuPont executives. So that's something where they'll kind of send us weekly reports on all the different firms as they change their opinion on DuPont. But I agree with Terry, though. I think it's drinking from a fire hose in a good way. It's just being able to navigate and not getting kind of paralysis by analysis and obsessing over, I need to read everything. I'm just kind of sticking with, what is effective and kind of sticking with the basics. I think it's easy for us to overcomplicate things in this business and really get in the weeds. I'm just a big believer in kind of just stick to the basics. That's really what works the most. But I just want to stress one thing I think Terry alluded to twice now. I think it's so important and powerful is the awareness for clients around the RIA model. And I think that the average client of a wirehouse has no idea how conflicted that model is. And the truth of the matter is that their loyalty is to their shareholders. The loyalty is not to the clients. It may be to some extent, but the loyalty is really to the shareholders. So I wish there was more. I hope there will be in the future more awareness from the client perspective on, hey, separating custody of assets, advice, and where products are manufactured. I think that's certainly a move in the right direction for the whole industry.
Perfect.
But go ahead, Louis.
No, I had a slightly different topic, so please ask your follow-up.
Well, yeah. So as a follow-up, that's an interesting point. We know a lot about the independent space, and so couldn't agree with you more. But I'd ask all of you, we hear from wirehouse advisors that make the comment that, if I ran a plain vanilla business, a non-ultra high net worth business, I could see going independent, but my clients require the all under one roof solutions that a Merrill Lynch or a UBS or a Morgan Stanley provides. And I even had one that said to me that when he watches these high net worth focused advisors leaving to go independent, they're leaving because they didn't know how to access the right tools and resources within UBS or Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley. And I imagine you would all think that that's a nutty comment, but I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I guess my initial reaction would be, if that's true, is it at any cost that they want that convenience? And it's really not on the client to provide the convenience. It's on the advisor. And Michael mentioned earlier about running a process on lending. I mean, that's huge for our clients to be able to do that. Yeah, we don't get paid on it. We're not conflicted on it anymore, but we can run a process one against the other. And then if you really want convenience, what about somebody that will also help you with your luxury travel, your private air travel, booking that jet, nutrition specialists, all these other things. Why, we can do that now. We can really provide them convenience. The wirehouses have no clue to the degree that we can do that. Yeah, is it more work operationally, and does it take some more moving parts? Yes, but gives us the ability to go upstream even more for the type of clients that we work with.
I would just add to what Terry's comments that basically that is completely in the advisor's head. That is not reality. And I will say, having drank the Kool-Aid for years at Merrill, it was in my head. I told myself, hey, a $5,000 child's Roth IRA should have 15 different index funds, not just the Vanguard Total Market Index, because they kind of banks convince you this is the right way to do business. And when it comes down to it, it was really just in my head. And when I realized, wait a second, one of the biggest expenses that wealthy families will ever have is taxes. And we're not allowed to ask for a tax return and do forward tax projections. That's just completely insane. Similar to Terry's story before, where they read, this is not your job. I remember doing a significant charitable strategy with a large client in 2016, I want to say, and it was a couple $1 million of tax savings in that year. And our compliance office, went crazy saying, "Hey, the branch office manager, this is not your job. It's the CPA's job. You're not a tax attorney." And we're kind of in a position to kind of pull all those pieces together for a family. And you're just very, very limited if you're not able to really give them proactive tax advice, et cetera.
Thank you. Great answer. So a question that all of these questions came from interested advisors, by the way. We didn't make any of these. I think the most popular question we got was about compliance. That was definitely the first question that we got. So first for Michael and Terry, because you each run your own SEC registered RIAs, meaning both of you have your own chief compliance officer native to your firm. So I'm wondering, how big of a deal is compliance in this segment of the world? How much time does it take? And do you regret it all having full control, but also the risk and the responsibility of the compliance hat within your firms?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, it's different in so many ways. Obviously, it goes from an adversarial relationship where one compliance officer or the process is meant to control 10,000 advisors, lowest common denominator approach, right? To a collaborative approach of how do we protect the firm, protect our clients, and grow the business. And obviously, when you're a business owner, you take an entirely different viewpoint of that collaboration and the importance of that. So it's hugely important, but it's very much more aligned now as opposed to adversarial.
Great answer. And is it like advisors worry about it taking up so much time because they see how involved compliance is at their firm? Is it a full-time job? Does it like bog you guys down?
Well, just real quick, we hire an outsourced firm for compliance, and then we have a compliance officer who's also our chief operating officer. So it doesn't take an outsized portion of our time, and partially it's because we chose to pay for a good portion of that.
The way that I would answer that, Lewis, is actually around hiring a great compliance partner. I think it's exactly as Terry mentioned, we use Foresight. They're terrific. So that's something where you can really lean on them for any compliance questions you have. But I think it's worth mentioning that just the fiduciary standard versus the suitability standard, you're in more of a position of loyalty with clients. So I think it's something where we went through an SEC audit, I want to say 6 or 8 months into starting our firm. We expected this is going to be just we're going to be just, slaughtered here. And really it was very informative. Like we, got a couple of things, feedback, just document this or have this. But I mean, really it was super helpful being that early on in terms of what they're looking for and being able to do kind of have a Q&A session with them, with the auditors around, what we should be keeping in mind.
Thank you for that. And Lori, with Raymond James, it's a little bit of a different scenario where there needs to be a Series 9 and 10 to supervise compliance, but a lot of the compliance also comes from the broker-dealer. What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, it's still, I would say, they want to get to yes more than they want to get to no, which is what we experienced before. But it is still a conservative firm that is still looking at a lot of people. So it isn't the same as what these two are going through. Right. I think there are other benefits, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit, that there are many ways to go independent, and there are many ways to be happy. And really, perhaps why you chose the three of us is that we've all three done it a little bit differently, and yet we're all exceedingly happy that we made the choices that we did. So I think that can be reflected in our business models as well.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a very natural segue to the next question I had. So you're right. each of you got from captive wirehouse employee and very successful, highly nationally ranked advisors to running your own businesses. But Lori, you did it through Raymond James on the independent side. Terry, you launched it really on your own in partnership with Fidelity, pulling together some other resources. And Michael, you opted to contract with Dynasty Financial Partners to be more like the turnkey, your turnkey launch partner. So you did all kind of get there differently. I'm wondering for each of you, now that you're independent, are there gaps that you've had to plug within your firm, whether from a staffing standpoint or any sort of activities that you really just took for granted from your respective firms that now either your resource partners do, or maybe it's something good for an advisor to know, like what was missing? What did we have to kind of backfill now that we're also business owners on top of advisors?
So I'm going to start because mine is again, independent light. And so I'm going to make a little plug for this because I think there's a lot of people that are maybe listening to this and they're listening to what Terry and Michael have gone through and they're like, oh yeah, this sounds great, but I don't think I can do this. This is a lot. There are things I don't like about where I am, but this sounds like a heavy load. And so to me, the RJFS or something like that, Mindy and Lewis can help you find other firms that do this for you. It's the in-between. It's what we needed. In other words, they're carrying the compliance load. They are doing a lot of things for us. We hired Insperity to do our HR and our payroll. We don't have to make every single decision that Terry and Michael do. We don't have all the freedoms they have. So you need to make sure for your business model and how you serve your clients that the amount of freedom that you have is enough to make you happy, because we all want to be happy and do the best we can for our clients. We felt like this gave us enough control and enough control on our relationships without building it from the ground like Terry did. So it works for us. And I would just throw that out there for people that aren't, managing $1 billion and are like, gosh, will this work for me? And it absolutely can work for you.
Yeah, what well said, because there's trade-offs with everything. I mean, Terry and Michael have seemingly more freedom because it's their own RIA, but you also probably pick up, which they could talk about, some additional responsibility and work. So it's all a balancing act of what it is you as the advisor value most. That's a brilliant perspective. How about Terry and Michael? Same question.
The quick answer for me on that is making a very quick decision to hire somebody in operations. It's a big part, especially, in the path that we took. There's so many moving parts that need to be solved for, so we can focus on other aspects, not only the clients, but the vision and strategy and implementation of that. So the operations part, the HR part, hard to fully appreciate until you're responsible for it. And then, probably some of the biggest gaps is in my own personal growth, and that's around leadership. It's morphing from just leading and being there for the clients to leading a firm if we truly want to grow like we think we are. So I'm still learning on that, and it's still a work in progress, but focusing on it. And I think that's one that the quicker people appreciate that's a skill that's a muscle they've got to exercise, the better.
I would say the exact same thing, more or less. I mean, basically, I do think it's important to mention that your number 2 person on your team or at your firm, whatever it is gonna wear a lot of hats. So I was mentioning Allison; she's a rock star, the co-CEO. I mean, basically, she was the general contractor for real estate expansion, so she was very involved in the build out. She's the HR manager. She's the CEO, obviously, half the time. She's the relationship manager as well. So I think that number 2 person on whatever team you're on is they have to know going in, I'm going to wear a lot of hats. Or if I don't want to wear those hats, maybe I should look at a tuck-in, joining an existing RIA, joining a Raymond James, joining an LPL, whatever it is. But I think as long as you know going in, this is what they're going to be doing, it most likely, because you're kind of, as the CEO, you're really getting in front of clients the most. So they're kind of in that unique position where they're kind of in between.
Thanks, Michael. The last question I had, then I think Mindy had one more before we wrap. So whoever wants to take it, whoever I guess was more in the weeds on the financial side. When you were looking at going independent, evaluating different firms and business models, part of the process is the firm's creating a pro forma profit and loss statement for you to be able to imagine what your business looks like on their platform after all the different expenses of running a business. From your standpoint, what were some of the surprises, and how accurate was the pro forma P&Ls to what you're actually seeing now as business owners?
I think the revenue side was spot on. We're not getting compensated in some of the areas that we got compensated before, so we had to adjust for that. Obviously, lending and being a big one. Revenue was spot on. Underestimated the costs in some areas, specifically marketing. I'm really purposefully trying to grow a brand and raise awareness in our area, and that there's ways to do that the slow way and ways to do that the quicker way, and those costs. So I underestimated that, but leaning into that because it also works. So that's one area that I would say I got surprised a little bit.
Anyone else want to take a counterpoint?
I think everything from the P&L from our standpoint was fairly what we would expect. Nothing was drastically different. I think we were a little sticker shocked at like office furniture, like $100,000. We're like, oh my God, this is insane. But overall, I would say it's nothing too far off.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
What did it cost to start the business? Forget about you lost the deferred comp and stuff like that, or the opportunity cost of certain things. But what was the hard dollar cost of security deposits? And before you even had $1 of revenue within your firms, do you have a rough approximation of how much it cost you to go independent?
Couple $100,000 maybe. I mean, I think it really wasn't that, at least from our standpoint, it wasn't that bad. Dynasty helped out there some, but I mean, quite frankly, it was not nearly, I think, if you compare it to any other startup business in the world, I think we are in a very, very fortunate position where our industry does not require a significant amount of upfront capital to start the business.
Yeah, it's the build out, right? It's the furniture, it's the build out, it's all of that stuff that's really costs the money. Now you're paying your help. We didn't add anybody. We came with the same number of people, and we're just adding people now. So marketing maybe, but it's not. If you're big enough to go independent, again, that's not like a significant reason not to do this.
And you have very nice furniture behind you, so I think
Thanks.
it was money well spent.
So I did not pay for furniture. No mahogany desks here, but we had expensive real estate market in Seattle area, and so we were probably into it about 500. But quickly, Fidelity supported us as we transitioned the business and recouped that pretty quickly.
But how many people do you have on your team?
We had 12 at the time. We have 23 now.
Yeah. So that actually, if I can pivot, that's really my last question is I want to ask you all mentioned at the beginning growth. It sounds like Terry, you've had astronomical growth. Michael, you sound like you've had some great growth, and you as well, Lori. So the final question is this, it's sort of twofold. What do you think is most responsible for the growth you've had? And what do you think the future looks like for your firm? Like what's on the horizon over the short term, the midterm, and the long term? So that's a lot packed into one question. Why don't we start with you, Terry?
From a growth standpoint, I think it's just that differentiated approach and having a niche. We're very disciplined around business owners with 10 million in investable or 25 million net worth, planning for and up through a liquidity event. And very focused on the planning aspect of it. We're very disciplined around that, and that aids in our brand branding, our positioning, and our awareness. So anytime there's a liquidity event planned in the Pacific Northwest, our hope is that we're in the conversation, right? And we're very good at it. So that stepping out of the brand illusion of a big global bank is really, you know, 3/4 of it, honestly. So going forward, it's just leaning into that, really doubling down on that focus, and then seeing where the needs of the families we serve take us as far as services. I mean, they will inform us how this looks 5 years from now, because now the ankle weights are off, right? So we can build it, and that's exciting. That's fun. It's fun for the whole team to kind of have a part of that.
Yeah, sounds great. Michael?
Yeah, I would say the biggest, I guess, attribution to our growth would have to be just differentiated story. I mean, basically, what we find is when we get referred to clients, Goldman Sachs or one of the wirehouses, and the advisors never review their tax return. I mean, it's the low-hanging fruit. This is obvious stuff. Maybe it's table stakes, but it's actually it's shocking to us. You know, $15-20 million client, advisors never review their tax return. How do they understand the tax impact of portfolio changes? I mean, it's literally driving a car at night with your headlights off. I mean, it's craziness. So I would say staying really focused and narrow on what you excel at. For us, it happens to be tax planning. And I would say for the future, relative to that question, Mindy, really this tax initiative. At the end of the day, we're in the business of getting things done for our clients, right? So if we can kind of file their taxes, handle that entirely, we're no longer the clients, not the middleman anymore between us and their tax advisor. So very often we'll do a tax strategy, and they're in the middle trying to explain what happened, and it's kind of confusing for them. They'd much rather say, hey, have it all taken care of, pull the CPA across the hall into the meeting to answer any tax questions. So it's exciting stuff.
Great. You think M&A will be part of your next chapter, Michael?
I sure do. So we added an advisor from Wells Fargo, I want to say back in April. So Lisa joined, there's 300 or 400 million of assets, about 60 families. And I will say it's been a home run. I mean, it's been a lot of work, of course, like any M&A transaction, but I think it's a huge win for her clients, a huge win for the firm. So I think that'll certainly be for kind of planning focus, like-minded advisors. We're certainly going to entertain, some M&A in the future.
Terry, I forgot to ask you that question. M&A, any M&A on your horizon?
No, is the short answer. Not that we're not open to it. We're getting some really good organic growth. The biggest reason to look at M&A is really to acquire talent. That's our biggest challenge, as it is with a lot of firms. The problem with M&A for us is there's not a lot of practices that look like ours. $10 million minimums, focused exclusively around the business owners. I'm sure they're out there, so we would be open to that. I think we're building a good platform, but for right now, we're just looking at organic growth.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Lori, how about you? To what do you attribute your growth, and what does the future look like?
I mean, like these two, I think knowing your clients, taking care of your clients, going the extra mile, doing stuff that we don't get paid for, right? They know we care about them. We're on top of it all, tax returns, right? Knowing what's going on in their life and in their personal life. I think staying on top of all of that, not being concerned about what you're earning, but being concerned about your clients, that leads through. And your clients feel it, your prospective clients feel it. And I think we're all only limited by ourselves. Anything is possible where we are.
Do you think M&A will be part of your future?
I don't know. I'm not looking for it, but you never say never.
Right. And sometimes the best opportunities come along when you're not looking for it. So all of you, I can't thank you enough. We've been at it for about an hour and 15 minutes, and we've taken up enough of your time. But we are so incredibly grateful for your time, your wisdom, and your generosity to share your perspectives with us and with our audience, and look forward to continuing the conversation another time. So to you, Lori, Terry, Michael, and of course, my partner, Lewis, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you for joining us and hope this episode answered the questions you've been thinking about. If there's anything we missed, please feel free to reach out. You can learn more about each of these guests and find a link to their initial appearance on the series by visiting the episode page on our website. And a special shout out once again to the panelists We're grateful for their time and expertise. I encourage you to visit our website, diamond-consultants.com, and click on the Tools and Resources link for valuable content. You'll also find a link to subscribe for regular updates to the series. And if you're not a recipient of our weekly email, Perspectives for Advisors, click on the articles link to browse recent topics. These written pieces are an ideal way to stay informed about what's going on in the wealth management space without expending the energy that full-on exploration requires. Feel free to email or call me if you have questions. I can be reached at 973-476-8578 or by email at mdiamond@diamond-consultants.com. Please note that all requests are handled with complete discretion and confidentiality. And keep in mind that our services are available without cost to the advisor, and you can find more information about that on our website. And again, if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with a colleague who might benefit from its content. And if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, I'd be grateful if you gave it a star rating and a review. That will let other advisors know if it's a show worth their time to listen to. This is Mindy Diamond on Independence.